Yo, what's good with y'all, yo? Now me, I'm a very avid movie watcher, movie goer type of person. And in the recent years, I've gained an appreciation for the art of acting and directing in all of its forms. But today, I'm not judging off of none of that because this is completely biased and this is completely just how I feel about movies that I watch and movies that I love. This is all how I feel about feature films, movies, pictures, or whatever you want to use to describe a movie. This list honestly took some time for me, as I'm sure it would for a lot of people, because it's hard to break down all of the movies that you ever watched and loved in your life down to 10 movies, but I managed to do it somehow. And as I said, some of these might not make sense to you because some aren't as serious or as Oscar worthy as the other ones, but this is strictly off of my own entertainment, and there are certain moments that I just love so much that I can compare them to other types of movies. There are moments in these movies that I love and truly hold dear to this very day. Now I know some people might say this is the weak way out, but it was already hard enough putting together just 10 movies that I love and putting them in any particular order out of all of the hundreds and millions of movies that I watched. I could try to, but to be honest, whenever I go back to this video, I'm going to feel different depending on whichever mood I'm in. But for now, you can count this order, I guess, but they're all perfect movies to me, and I'm going to reiterate that, for me. But no more talking, let's get to it. The top 10 movies of all time, in my opinion. Now I already know what some uncultured people are going to be thinking, oh my god, he put a Ninja Turtles movie in his top 10. And you're right, this is completely biased as I said, but this movie I have watched over 200 times since I was a kid, and it still has that nostalgic feel. This movie has so many classic fights and moments, and even though it's a close call, I've always had this movie over the first one simply for the style that it had. I mean, just look at the introduction of the movie. I've never even been to New York until like last year, but this movie always made me want to be in New York and try the pizzas out there. This movie was doper than the first one to me just for the Shredder return scene and the Secret of the Ooze storyline. The storyline of the mutation ooze that made them into what they became. I mean, the Vanilla Ice rap scene is beyond legendary, and Keno is probably the best guest character this era of TMNT movies ever had. Plus, I personally like the April in this movie better than the first one, and the Toka and Razor fight was really the big. This movie just doesn't take itself too serious like the first movie, and I love that energy. It really makes it feel like a TMNT movie, and why I've always loved this franchise. 10 out of 10 movie. Life by Martin and Eddie Murphy is one of the funniest movies ever made. Not only is the movie funny as hell, but the story is absolutely historically true, as black men have been given life for murders they never committed during the early 1900s this movie was based in. In this movie, Ray and Claude get intertwined together in a bad situation when they show up at the wrong place and at the wrong time to discover a dead body and have the police called on them by some racist Southerners. And this all happens to happen when they're out of town. They get life and are surrounded by a cast of funny characters played by some of the greatest comedians ever, like Bernie Mac, Anthony Anderson, Guy Torry. I mean, some of the greatest comedians in this movie had some of the best scenes. My favorite scene will always be the scene where Ray gets into a fight with the big guy over some cornbread.
Fuck him. Hey man, he gonna eat his cornbread, alright? Fuck you.
Maybe I ought to eat your cornbread.
Oh motherfucker, you can't have my cornbread, that's for damn sure. Because if you try to take my cornbread, part 2 of my killing spree gonna begin up in here on your ass right now. If you think about my cornbread, they get the taste out your mouth, that's for damn sure. Now fuck him, fuck that, cause I'm from New York City, goddammit. Nobody take no cornbread from me. And that go for you and any other you motherfucking farmers wanna try some shit. You fuck around with me, it's gonna be consequences and repercussions.
And scenes like this show how really Eddie Murphy was truly the star of this movie. As in this movie, Martin Lawrence played more of a straight man. The Upper Room, Ray's Boom Boom Room.
Out of Peppy.
So many more classic scenes are why this movie is a timeless comedic masterpiece. And it stands the test of time, not only as a comeback at the time for Eddie Murphy, but in my opinion, his and Martin's funniest and most collectively entertaining movie of all time. Scarface is Al Pacino's most famous role, at least in the black community. I can at least say that, as Scarface's impact speaks for itself. Tony Montana, a Cuban immigrant from a military background or something like that, gets into the drug game as a way to attain his American dream. This movie is so quotable and legendary that it's almost like people have to downplay it because they would say it's too hokey or it's too over the top. But to be honest, this movie is only so overquoted and so overplayed because it is truly that great. Regardless if you know everything about this movie and how iconic it is, how iconic Tony Montana characters is, and it's still a masterpiece no matter what. And it is a one of a kind and opened a new world for cinema. Just like everything great, some people don't appreciate it at the time and would say it was over the top and blah blah blah, but that's only because the story was about a minority immigrant who just got a piece of the American pie and exposed fears in America's conservative minds. Tony was without a doubt the villain and the protagonist of this film.
What'll I make you? Good? You're not good. You just know how to hide. So say good night to the bad guy.
But he makes you want to root for him even though he snakes his boss Frank by taking his woman and kills his own best friend just for dating his sister, which is not too crazy because I guess he didn't want his sister and the lifestyle that he was living, but it's still kind of crazy. And Tony is still relatable as he ended up dying by doing his only good deed in the entire movie.
Fuck you. What do you think I am? You think I killed 2 kids and a woman? Fuck that. I don't need that shit in my life.
The World Is Yours backdrop after the legendary shootout scene ends with him in a pool of blood is probably the most iconic ending to a movie ever for me, and definitely a top 10 flick. Complete 180 of energy, but movies are just like music, different emotions and different feelings for different times. And Rush Hour has always been one of my favorite movies to ever pick me up. It always makes you feel good. It's one of those movies that you just love to watch and you love to laugh at. For real, this movie is like a glass of wine after a long day or some kind of drink that makes you laugh. It would be this movie. Chris Tucker, Jackie Chan, no more needs to be said. Their chemistry is amazing in this movie, and it even peaks past the first movie for me. It picks up off of the first classic, and just like the other sequel I named, the first one could just as well be here. But this one is so special to me because of moments like this.
Sorry, man. Oh, y'all look alike. Watch out!
Unlike the first Rush Hour where Lee steps into Carter's city and has to learn his world, in this one Carter goes to Hong Kong and has to learn Lee's surroundings and learn how to live in China. And once they go to China, he is introduced to the triads and they have to stop Ricky Chan. But the story in this movie is honestly a MacGuffin as they are in most comedies because it's all about the laughs. This movie will always make you feel good no matter what's going on in life. Simply put, this movie is just a feel-good ass all-time legendary comedy. As I would say, not only the best buddy cop film of all time, but the greatest comedy movie of all time in my opinion. And as other comedy movies like White Chicks or Superbad will have you in stitches laughing, they don't feel as natural and as much of a comedy movie as this one. They just feel like jokes inside of a movie that wouldn't naturally happen in real life, if that makes sense to y'all. This movie completely feels like natural comedy and nothing is forced. This is a completely perfect film made to make you laugh. To be honest, this movie is almost a cheat code as seasonal movies always hold a special place in our heart, especially if they came out around the time or even in my case before we were born or when we were children. This movie will always hold a special place in my heart. This movie is a live action remake of a classic Christmas story by Dr. Seuss, but unlike the cartoon version, this one has comedic genius and comedic timing of the one and only Jim Carrey.
That's what it's all about, isn't it? That's what it's always been about. Gifts. But this whole Christmas season is stupid. Now pucker up and kiss it, Whoville.
The Grinch story is the same as the whatever he is. Grinch grows up in Whoville and has a bad experience around Christmas time and then resents the day until he is older. He basically becomes the anti-Santa. Jim gives the character a whole new energy. Jim is the only man who could play this role like he did, to be honest. This is simply an all-time Christmas movie that we all know and love and have probably seen a million times. But it's for a reason, because it's timeless, and for me and my family, we can always bond over this movie and always laugh and have that warm feeling that it always gives you. This movie is a classic seasonal Christmas movie. That intro just makes you feel so good, doesn't it? It always does that for me. It's just one of the best intros ever. This is another one where it is debated if the first one or the second one is the best one. And for me, I always have to go with the original, because I love the true origin story of Peter Parker. In this one, we are brought into his world, how he was just a nerdy kid who was bullied and picked on and then was bit by a radioactive spider. His friend Harry's dad ended up becoming the Green Goblin, who was played by William Dafoe, who was awesome in his role. It made me forever love the Green Goblin. But Peter starts to use his powers and learn he doesn't even know his own strength. The most pivotal and meaningful scene of this movie is after he enters a wrestling competition to get money by using his newfound powers.
The Amazing Spiderman!
You're going nowhere.
Peter still doesn't get the respect that he deserves, as the promoter doesn't want to give him his scratch, so to speak. So when a promoter is robbed, Peter lets him go, and we all know what happens next.
Stay back. Stay back.
My uncle! What happened?
Carjacker, he's been shot. Look, we just called the paramedic.
Peter. Over here, Uncle Ben.
This is where Peter picks up the lessons of with great power comes great responsibility after his Uncle Ben's death. This is where he truly tries to use his power for good after losing his uncle to violence. This is the only superhero movie on the list for a reason, because most superhero movies don't truly hit the marks like this one for me, or even most Spider-Man movies do. Spider-Man is so relatable because he gets kicked down like we all do, struggles with love like we all do, and even struggles with good and bad inside of him like we all do. This movie means a lot to you more when you mature, because you'll learn all the lessons inside of it actually are true. And I'll be completely honest, the second one does talk about more mental power and how your mind is really your true powers, but this one just touches a different level as far as action and as far as Peter learning who he truly is. But I will admit that the second one does show how Peter has to go through so much adversity, and this one doesn't necessarily show that side. And for me, it is just by a hair that this one passes the sequel for the constant action and perfect pace it has. It isn't as deep in the psychology as the sequel or a Dark Knight movie is, but it is far more exciting and paced better than those movies. Simply put, this is the greatest action movie ever. Now these last four movies are all perfect and even more unordered than all the other ones, because they are all interchangeable and movies I've watched numerous times. Pulp Fiction is Tarantino's magnum opus, and it has a vibe that has never been touched again. The 90s is the best era for movies ever, and this is one of the reasons. Pulp Fiction is a 3-chapter story of 2 gangsters, 2 robbers, and a boxer, to say the least about the story. First of all, the opening scene is one of the greatest scenes ever.
What country you from? What ain't no country I ever heard of? They speak English and what?
What?
English, motherfucker! Do you speak it?
Yes.
Then you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
Describe what Marcellus Wallace looks like. Say what again? I dare you. I double dare you. Ezekiel 25:17. The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the iniquities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers. And you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee.
I mean, Samuel L. Jackson is the star of this movie, clearly, as this took him to a whole new level that we now know him for and made him the legend that he is today. The quotables of this movie is almost up there with Scarface, because Tarantino is the king of random dialogue and bloody violence, but he makes it all make sense where it's not just random words and random violence. Yeah, I ain't even mentioned I got the shirt on. This is how much I love this movie. This is how much I love this movie, y'all. That's why I got this shirt on right now. Vincent and Jules are trying to retrieve this case for their boss Marcellus, and it's again a MacGuffin, which is one of the most known ones. The boss gets into a beef with Butch, the boxer, over the wager that they had because he was supposed to drop the fight. And this movie is all just a mixed bag that just falls together beautifully, and you can watch it about 100 times and always catch some new things.
Actor in a place like this.
Correct. Same as banks, these places are insured.
I mean, I just learned that in the first scene where they're talking about the robbery, you can actually see Vincent walking in the background, and I had just never seen that before. It's just so much gems in this movie that makes it such a gem. And the final speech from Samuel Jackson is one of my favorite, if not my favorite scene of all time. And it speaks volumes to how this movie is so perfect for its dialogue and the meaning that it truly holds. And Samuel was like, "You're the weak and I'm the righteous one," and it's just so awesome, man. I just love this movie. There's so much to unpack from this movie that it'll leave you just in shock after you see it. And I'll just leave it at this. Not only do you have to see this movie for your entertainment purposes, this movie is an experience on its own, and it is a true definition of a cinema masterpiece. Goodfellas is the greatest mobster movie ever, and I don't care about no Godfather and none of those old movies that came out in the 70s. This movie is chock to the brim with action, great vibes, and aesthetic as well as amazing dialogue. Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro, Martin Scorsese directing, which is his magnum opus again, and a movie that truly shows the reality of the New York Mafia, how brutal they are and how much they will do just to get what they want. It's about 3 hours long, but it feels like 1 hour because between Ray Liotta's character narration and all of Joe Pesci's insane live wire murders, it feels like it just goes by so quick because it's so entertaining that you don't want to take your eyes off the screen. It just feels like a timeless experience, and every time you watch it, you can still always catch something new. Not as much as Pulp Fiction as far as there'll be things that you can catch, but the stuff that you'll see, you'll be like, I never noticed that. That's why this guy did that. You just have to see it. This is a movie that shows truly how brutal the mafia is and how power and fear are what truly runs the world, as Henry would say.
To us, those goody-good people who work shitty jobs for bum paychecks and who took the subway to work every day, worried about their bills, were dead. I mean, they were suckers. They had no balls. If we wanted something, we just took it. If anyone complained twice, they got hit so bad, believe me, they never complained again. It was just all routine, and you didn't even think about it.
Because this shows how the real gangsters saw the world, and they would get what they wanted by any means necessary. Keep that in mind, that quote. Go get your shine box if you pay me.
Funny how.
I mean, it's close to Scarface with quotables. Unlike Scarface, it passes it in realism. And unlike Scarface, this focuses on more than just one character. I know that Ray Liotta's character is probably the main one, but they focus on so many different parts of the mafia. The wives, the mothers, the families, the people who are murdered from it, and the innocent, and all people who were around New York in those times that were hurt by the mafia. It focuses on the whole city on a time when crime was run rampant by the wise guys. Goodfellas is as good as it gets for me, and a poster boy for all gangster films. Denzel Washington is truly the greatest actor of all time for me, as he truly turns into one of, and to me personally, the greatest activist in American history. Malcolm X is the only true autobiography on here, and it shows how great Malcolm's story is. This is based on the Malcolm X autobiography book, and it is true to the story. It shows how Malcolm Little became Malcolm X, from zoot suit conch wearing lost boy to confident leader alpha male activist. Malcolm grows out of what he calls the slave mind, and after being arrested for robbing houses with white women, he becomes the man Allah destined him to be. He finds Islam as his religion in prison and sends letters to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Malcolm devotes his life to Muhammad, as when he comes out of prison, he becomes a minister for him, fully committed to Islam and his branch, and and he speaks on behalf of him for 12 whole years. He was willing to lay his life down for that man, and unfortunately the man that he was preaching for was a false prophet who wasn't holding up his end of the bargain, as he was caught for adultery and did so many things that he told Malcolm and all of his followers not to do. And Malcolm, speaking for black folks so aggressively, caused jealousy from fellow NOI members, and Malcolm himself gets in trouble and becomes his own man as we know him today. I love this movie, man. Denzel puts on his greatest performance, and honestly, to me, the greatest acting performance ever, because he turned into that man in these scenes. You couldn't even tell it was a different person. You would have thought it was just Malcolm X, and a lot of people got the man tattooed on him, and he's just an actor. He's not even Malcolm X. And honestly, with that being said, for this movie having, to me, the greatest acting performance ever, it shows you how much of a gem and a masterpiece this is. Spike Lee is hit or miss for me, but luckily he hit this one out of the park, because this one is an all-time classic, as this is a go-to movie for anybody who needs not only a great movie about black history, but an example of what a movie can do to impact the world and how an actor is supposed to aspire to be that great. This movie is truly peak cinema. Get Out is the most recent on the list, and it's for a reason. It's the most perfect movie in the last 30 years. It's a horror movie that's creepy as hell, it's a comedy movie that's funny as hell, and it's also a social commentary movie all in one. Jordan Peele definitely peaked and had yet to touch this level or even get a little bit close after this, because this movie is so perfect. Chris has an interracial relationship with Rose, and he goes to meet her family. When he goes there, he sees they have black workers, which seems weird, but the father makes him feel like it's not so weird because he makes him feel good that he loves black people. But some suspicions are confirmed when Chris is later hypnotized by Rose's mom and ends up in a scary place called the Sunken Place. This is where he is viewing his life through his body through someone else. He's stuck in his own mind and he sees someone else living his life. It's hella creepy after this point because he starts to see how weird the guests are that the family has and how weird the black co-workers are. We are soon let in a bit during the party on how weird this family is once the black guy snaps on Chris and tells him to get out, and he finally starts to act normal because he was acting weird the whole time, and now it makes it seem creepy, like there's something really going on there. This movie has so much shocking twists and turns and deep meanings and so much humor, it's hard to think of a movie that gives you so much feelings in one setting. First you're on her girlfriend Rose's side, then you're hating her, and then you're rooting for Chris to kill the whole family and get the hell out of that house. This movie is a modern day classic, and through aging I feel it would be an all-time classic, if it's not already an all-time classic, and it will soon be looked at as probably the greatest film of all time, not only for its uniqueness but its boldness, its thrill, and perfect pacing. Not to mention the Easter eggs are super deep in this movie through the dares and all of the black mold in the basement. This is really what you want to see out of modern movies, to see modern movies try to be this experimental. This is a modern day classic and will forever be the measuring stick for what a modern classic should feel like. These movies are all my opinions, obviously, as I stated a million times, but I feel as though this list ended up being perfect. I really want to know what some of y'all favorite movies and how y'all want to rank them. Was I wrong about what movies was I right and wrong about? Tell me just how y'all feel in general. I really want to know how y'all feel. Tell me what movies y'all rank and what are y'all top 10 movies if y'all can think of them. Tell me what movies y'all love that changed y'all life, and please tell me some of y'all favorite flicks. But until the next time, it's your boy Dale. See y'all later, man. God bless y'all and peace.